Do you remember Melchor Morales and his lawyer, the president of the Poetic Justice Association, who have already spoken to us here on this podcast about how minors under guardianship are used for the pleasure of politicians, officials, and judges? Do you recall the Coten Cabezudo case? Do you know who Jeffrey Epstein is? Well, gentlemen, you should know that we have our own cases here in Spain too. And Cristina is now going to talk about another case she's facing. I'm going to let her elaborate and I'm going to let her tell us because what she's about to share is outrageous.
Well, let's move on to the second matter, which will be tried at the City of Justice in Valencia next March 2nd at 9:30 public hearing. You'll see for yourselves what I'm about to say that day. In 2021, I started this whole matter by sending a complaint, a grievance endorsed and signed by 5 mothers with their full names and identification numbers whose children had been taken away from them. They were put under guardianship due to a neglect case filed. That's what needs to be signed, what the public official, the territorial councillor has to sign for the administration. Whether they go to a woman's house or to a school while the woman is at home and they take a child and she never sees them again, it's better to be the one who signs. This is called Carmen Fenollosa. This lady was investigated in the Monica Oltra case about the abuse and the cover-up of the abuse of the girl who was a victim of Oltra's husband, because at the time...
How old was the girl? Sorry.
The girl was 13 when she was continuously abused and taken advantage of in a room of the same foster center where she was being punished. Alright, during the investigation, we meet Carmen Fenollosa, the regional director of Castellón, okay? This lady admits in court that the Department of Equality, led by Monica Oltra, ignores restraining orders from the investigating judge to keep the abuser away from the girl who is in the foster center. Second, these restraining orders are ignored by the department and hidden, and the abuser is not removed from the foster center where the girl is. This is the lady who handles these restraining orders mistakenly issued to him during his statement. Is it Carmen Fenollosa? Or is it the lady who is in charge of signing the abandonment orders? Of all the mothers who asked me to file a complaint with the ombudsman, they asked me why. Because they know me after the press reports that I am prosecuting Monica Oltra. They asked me for help, and I write a report in which I state that these mothers have had their children taken away, that all the children have ended up elsewhere, with lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual, and intersex couples close to the administration at that time, when the Socialist Party and Compromís were in power.
I think it's like I mean...
All the children taken from these mothers who asked me for help. I confirm that they were signed by the same territorial director, Carmen Fenollosa, from CEA, who at the time provided this evidence. I'm telling you about the case of Monica Oltra, in which it's clear that they hid restraining orders against Oltra's husband from the minor. In other words, Monica Oltra hid restraining orders that had been issued by the investigating court by a judge. They hide them, they keep them, and by mistake they present them during the testimony in the proceedings carried out in the trial against Monica Oltra and company. In the process, this lady is the one who signs the abandonment files for all the women who later ask her for help. All of her children end up being placed with families, with couples, lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual, and intersex close to the administration, somehow connected to the Socialist Party and to Compromís. I send this report to the Ombudsman, in which I also include the subsidies that go to certain third sector companies that are in charge of managing these children within the care centers. These are the NGOs that say they don't charge anything, but they take most of the money that the state gives for each child under guardianship in the care centers. When you see that a child costs 4,000 to 8,000 euros a month, depending on the child and the autonomous community, that money doesn't go to the child, it doesn't go to the family, it goes to the clientelist network of the administration. That's where the foster child business is. All right, the factory. One of these families is a family in Castellón, and it's about a baby who was taken from them on January 1st or January 2nd, 2018 from the Castellón hospital. The reason is a neglect report signed by Carmen Fenollosa because the father still hasn't registered the baby. Okay, they can take your child away. The authorities can take your child away for whatever reason they want. It's completely arbitrary, and for years, the administration's decision prevails over judicial decisions. The administration acts and fights with it for years, and this is one of the best examples. Well, they take the youngest girl away at 9 months old. This girl is placed in an irregular foster care arrangement, and to this day, it is considered irregular because we have a Supreme Court ruling that describes it as such. To an LSTBI couple?
Men or women, men.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's not that I'm homophobic, it's just that it's an LSTBI couple. Just like all the other couples of all the mothers whose children are taken away and end up in those couples, I mean, what do you want me to do?
The children of these mothers always end up in the hands of lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual, and intersex couples.
Exactly. Close to the administration?
Close to the administration.
Related to administration. This is very much the case of this man named Victor Manuel Serra, PK, lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual, and intersex secretary of the Socialist Party. Also, in his organization, in his lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual, and intersex association, Miralcan de Turia, there is the Secretary of Childhood and Adolescence of the Socialist Party at the regional level, Ms. Noemi Mirales. And these people end up with this minor. Despite a first instance ruling, there is an appeal, a second instance ruling, and the Supreme Court's ruling. They say that the department is required to prepare a plan to gradually reintegrate the minor into her biological family. The girl was 5 at the time, and Victor Serra...
He's from Adolescent Services, and I've worked with these couples for 5 years.
I hadn't been able to meet...
Neither his mother nor his...
Mother, his father lost his life in the process. I won't go into details.
He took it away from her.
From her grandparents? For 5 years. But these grandparents have to endure the scorn and the coercion of the department. They are told, first of all, not to worry, not to make a fuss, because the parents are very young and can have more children. This is something that is often said to families whose children are taken away.
But I want to ask you a question here, a very delicate one. Has this girl suffered abuse?
No. Okay, no, not that I know of.
Okay.
Okay, not that I know of, but no.
For me, she endured the worst abuse imaginable, being taken from her parents' arms.
They steal your identity for 5 years. You don't know where you come from. You don't know where you come from. And this matter is currently the subject of a legal process in which Monica Ultra, in addition to being investigated in the case of covering up the sexual abuse of this girl, who was under the care of her husband, she is currently charged with illegal detention of a minor, coercion, and misconduct. Why? Because there was a moment when the department told the grandparents that either they give up the girl, obviously through the courts, or they would be denied the right to visit her. At the family meeting point, when they finally managed to start seeing her at the family meeting point, assisted and supervised by the authorities for 4 years, they weren't able to see her. When they managed to have visits at a supervised family meeting point, the child services tell them to drop the lawsuit against the administration if they want to keep seeing the girl at the family meeting point. At the time, the father was prevented from registering the child. They didn't want to register the child,
so that they could later take her away from him. This family is vulnerable.
It's a family that doesn't have the power that the administration has. It's a family that, yes.
How do they pick the victim? Whose children will they take?
The profile is usually that of vulnerable people who have had low resources, low intellectual and professional training. people who don't know how to defend themselves in a legal process, people who can't afford a lawyer, people that the rest of society usually doesn't care about because society always thinks that something like this will never happen to them. But there are also many cases of abused women whose children are taken away by the authorities, supposedly for their own good. That's the excuse. While this woman is assisted and finds better conditions to be able to have her child. For example, one of the women who signed this complaint to the Ombudsman and to the Síndico de Greuge of the Valencian community, which is the equivalent of the Ombudsman in the Valencian community, she is a woman who has now passed away. They take her child away when she asks for a shelter for vulnerable women. She asks for it because she has a baby, she's alone, the father doesn't want anything to do with the child, and she requests that shelter. One day they call this lady Miss Carmen Fenollosa. Again, they call her to fill out some paperwork in the administration office below the supervised housing center with the stroller. And when this lady comes out, the child is no longer in the stroller, she never sees him again. I interviewed this lady. I mean, she exists. I interviewed her back in 2022. Goodbye.
Well, here TED has all these mothers on the platform and they want to come here, and I want you to know that I give them a voice, okay?
This lady has passed away now. She passed away last year. And why?
And why?
Because they said she was obese, of course, that she was obese. In the San Paro file, it says she is obese. They make things up, that she has a boyfriend, that she has an imaginary friend. It's a lie. This woman had a partner she met in a village. Abused women, complicated divorces, and they don't want them to be with their fathers. The Gaia case in Barcelona is another very paradigmatic administration in this sense.
So you become like the defender. You become the defender of all these mothers, involuntarily of all these, well, voluntarily, because I see you're very fierce.
The others get very angry. Naturally, if someone took my child, I'd die.
That's totally normal, Cristina. I understand you. I mean, you start a crusade against the administration, which makes completely arbitrary use of its power and takes children away from certain families. Their children?